We've invited into the studio today Frank and Carol Jarboe, very experienced first-person reenactors, and they've got a lot to share with us for this episode. Kevin starts off this session with a question about why this type of research, this really in-depth, inner-person, possibly first-person interpretation, why this kind of research is something that we should even consider doing.
We're talking to a group of 21st century people. Why? Why is this important? Why is this important for them to consider this as a possible journey for themselves into living history?
For me, I spent the first year and a half of our reenacting career as the
Parson's wife.
As the Parson's wife, which had no story. I really didn't have a name. I was literally putting on the clothes and just going out and spending my weekend sitting in a corner, sewing or whatever I had that I brought along with me to do so that I didn't get bored. And I never really felt like I got very far into the reenactment. I always felt like I was skimming along the top. Here I'd done all this research on the period of time, but I didn't know anything about the people, really know about the people. And it was only after I made the move forward to decide to become somebody rather than just a wide entity, a part of the crowd. I wanted to be somebody so that I knew while I was there. And as I began to develop that and to do the research into this person I was creating, I got deeper and deeper and deeper into the whole reenacting and the whole history. And instead of being a generic, I began to feel like I was part of the whole thing. It got so much richer. It just got richer and richer and richer. And now when I go out as Maggie and I'm at an event, I look at it through totally different eyes than I did the other way. Just floating on the top. Just floating on the top. For me, that makes this much more satisfying, much more of something to look forward to. But for some people, it would frighten them to death. They're much more comfortable just being part of the crowd, and that's fine. But there are going to be people out there that are going to want that. They're going to want to move forward. They want to get into this richer, and they want to taste how close can we get to actually representing this. And we're never going to get all the way there. There's no way we can get there because we're not those people. But we can, like you said, we can try. And we can take steps forward. And the more we step into that, the richer the experience is of being out there.
Sometimes it's a half second at a time. You get half a second and you go, ooh, this is what it was like. Maybe, yeah. For just one moment, it felt real.
We call that, we have a term for that, we call that the pristine moment.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. We learned that from a friend of ours, a long hunter in Michigan. He introduced us to that term, and it's like that's a perfect term for that.
And we've had pristine moments in forts built with telephone poles. Mm-hmm. Okay, it doesn't always have to be. We look at Martin Station as this is one of the places we enjoy going because of the extent to which it is built historically. But we've also been in forts with telephone poles, and we've had pristine moments because we've sought to become that 18th century person, and for that little instant, it works.
It's like you can just almost taste it, and you almost catch your breath. Mm-hmm. It could have been like this. There it was. Yeah.
You know, I think there's another benefit too that people ought to consider pursuing first person for this reason. To consider the worldview of an 18th century person, you also have to be mindful of your own worldview, and you have to be aware of the contrasts. You have to be able to take the 21st century glasses off to put the 18th century glasses on,
Right.
And to pursue a persona to this length, it's probably equally an exercise in understanding yourself as it is understanding someone else. And it's a cycle where you're having to cycle back. You as you understand 18th century worldview, the 18th century worldview of this particular person, you're comparing it to your own worldview, and that's cycling back and comparing between the two.
Yeah, it allows you to sort of step outside of yourself and look at yourself from a different perspective.
Which I believe to be a healthy thing.
Yes, absolutely. And doing a first person sometimes will change your own 21st century views on things.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, you'll come into starting this first person, and as you learn more and more about how they would view things, you'll find your own views beginning to change a little about what you thought about them or about that time.
The 18th century evangelical worldview is in a lot of ways vastly different from a 21st century evangelical worldview. And in a lot of ways, I like the 18th century better. And has it made a change in who Frank is? Absolutely. It sure has.
John, we have on our next point, we have down as our next point, how do we develop the inner person? And wow, this conversation so far has just been so weighty.
Right. Right. But now we get down to the nitty gritty and the application and the development and how. So we've talked about understanding, number one, our own worldview. And I'm not sure how we go about what tools we use to dig into our own worldview and say, okay, this is why I think what I think, so that we can take off those glasses. I don't know that we can have a grip on that exactly. There's no set of, step one, step two, step three. But we can start talking about the methods by which we can do the research for developing the inner person, at least from the 18th century point of view. So where did you, as you were building your research for that, what kind of research were you looking for? And how did you sort of construct this inner person?
Well, since I was doing a specific my thought was I wanted to present indentured servants. So my research had to start with them. I needed to know where they came from, what they did here, what their purpose was, how long they served. I needed to know all of that kind of background just about the indentured servants themselves. And by that, I went to books. I had many, many books. There were some that you can get online for free. And I ordered a number of books that people that had come before me and had done this kind of research have written. And I read them all, and I went through and marked them and tried to apply it to this area that I'm in.
And not all of them agreed.
And not all of them agreed. In fact, there are two very different schools of thoughts about indentured servants. One is a yay for them. This was good for them. I'm glad it happened, and they really were better off. And one for wasn't it terrible? They were treated so badly. This was awful. You've got totally different camps on indentured servants. So I had to explore both of those, and I think this is where our own worldview comes in. I had to step back from that and go, how do I feel about that? Was it a good thing or was it a bad thing? And I had to get my feet. How was my philosophy toward that before I started talking about what my character's philosophy was going to be about that? So as I researched, that whole worldview of myself came in alongside of it, which I think is a good thing. Once I got that research underneath, and that was a hefty amount of research, then I had to start looking at where do I want to come from? What do I want to be? Here are the 5 countries that we brought indentured servants from. So what am I comfortable with? The easiest one would have been English, of course. Then it wouldn't have, that's where the most of them came from, the bulk of them came from. And then I had to look at what research was out there for me. And like Frank, I reached back into my own background. And my people came from Ireland, and at least 3 of them were indentured servants. So I thought, okay, I want to represent my family. So I'm going to Ireland. So then I had to get immigration books, Irish indentured books, books that were written by people in Ireland about where they went and what happened to them and what drove them away. Then I had to research the history of Ireland, and I had to think about that time period, what was happening in the country I was at, why would I have come? And so it just kept going further and further. And then when I started choosing names, I had to go back into that time period and look at birth records and what kind of names were being. I looked at all the immigration of the ones that were brought over here and what was a common name that I felt from this area. I had to look into what kind of religion would I have been there. Everyone thinks the Irish were all Catholics. That's not true. There were a lot of Presbyterians that were over there that had come from the Scots that had been transplanted over there. So do I want to be Irish or Scotch-Irish? Where do I want to be from in Ireland? I need to go to that county, and I need to go to that town, and I need to see what was the prevalent religion of that period and that particular place, And so as I narrowed the possibilities of what she could be, my study went on and on and on and on and on, and I had to reach behind me and bring along what I'd started with and fit it into those slots in order to make Maggie what she was.
And that idea that you started with changed
It did.
as you encountered the
It
history.
did. In fact, I actually brought the Maggie out in May of that first year and did not like her. And so I changed her over the summer, and it took me almost a year to get her where I wanted her.
When you started your research, did you have a motivation, a particular story that you were trying to tell to elicit a response?
Not so much a story, but like I said, I spent a year and a half being a nothing to me. By a nothing, I meant as an educator, I felt like I was not accomplishing anything. I was just kind of out there floating. I'm not a textile person. I wish I was. But the women around me could do all these beautiful things, and they could talk about their spinning, and they could talk about their weaving, and they could talk about their stitching. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to talk about something. And I happened to hear a lecture on the lower people that were here in the colonies, and one of the groups that he covered was indentured servants. And I thought, now, I've heard of those, but I don't know a lot about them, and so I went to see what they were. And the more I read about them, the more I thought, this is a story that needs to be brought out. This was a large group of people that helped to settle our country that nobody is talking about, or at least not in my area. I've not seen it. If they're playing indentured servants, they're not saying anything about it. Nobody's bringing it out. And so that became my motivation, was I want to bring that story out. And then from that point is where I came into a person.
So it took a lot of general research, sort of
Right.
digging around until you find the truffles to go
Right.
digger. It's like, no, okay, I found a gem here. I'm going to dig in this spot and continue to mine that for this idea. And as you get deeper into that, you really find the true nuggets that it's like, okay, this is what I want to do. So it's very hard to go in with this, with this perfect idea that you're going to research and come up with. First you kind of go at it.
Right. It's too broad.
Generally,
it's
yeah.
just too broad at the beginning. But that's the nice thing about this, is you can come in and pick a subject or a person or an ethnic group or something in your own background that you would like to know more about. And as you do your research, you will find those little tips of the iceberg that you go, hey, that's interesting. I think I'd like to pursue that for a little while. And it may not be the right one at the very beginning. You may get down the road and go, that's not really what I want to do, and come back out and go another direction. But the general research is the thing to start with. And I always say, pick an area that you're interested in anyways. If you are a textile person, if you are a merchant, if you're a cook, what do you like? Do you like to shoot guns? Okay, go down that direction and do your research. Are you a military person? What draws you? And start with that wide knowledge, and then as you get that, you will find little narrow rabbit trails, if you will call it, that will look interesting to follow, and follow them. Take your time, and eventually something will speak out to you, and you'll say, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be.
But remember, one of the most important tools that we have is saying, I don't know. My Parson John or Reverend Griswold doesn't know everything about everything. You can ask me questions about firearms, and I'm going to say point the open end towards the other guy. You know, I know generalities, but I don't know specific firearms. I don't know specific flints and specific locks. I know some fine gun makers, and I'm going to go say go talk to them. But I don't know everything about everything, and I think one thing that we have the misconception of is if somebody asks us an obscure question about some general that fought in this particular battle, it's very good and okay to say, I don't know. And because my persona would not have known. But what I do know, I know and feel like I can speak to.
Now, Maggie knows everything, but I answer with her naivety. I connect it to something in her mind that she thinks is what it is, or what she thinks they're talking about, or she connects it with something that she is familiar with. You know, doing the laundry demonstration, I have children, especially all the time, talking to me about these boxes that they have, that you can put your laundry in and push a button and it just works. And I said, I got a box like that too, but I have to get down in it to be able to do my work, you know. So I try to connect it to something that Maggie would be familiar with. And that's a fun thing too, to show how we would view that, or how we would think about that. Oh yeah, we've got those. Yeah, we've got those. They're like this, and you use an 18th century equivalent to that. So you can also use that as a
Yes.
as a tool to be able to push away the questions that you really don't want to answer or can't answer, which is perfectly fine. You don't have to know everything.
When you're doing this research and you're trying to build this inner person, this worldview, you're going through all these. I mean, we mentioned all these topics, and there's probably some more that we need to think about when. And I mean, you mentioned the idea that we don't have to know everything.
No, not up front, not right away.
Right. And maybe you can even construct this inner person for just an anecdote or just a small period of time. I only have to hold this first person together through this amount of a story. And so therefore you don't necessarily have to start with, I need to know everything about what they would have thought about, XYZ.
Right.
Because I mean that takes a lifetime for you to get that for yourself.
It does.
And you're trying to do it for somebody else in the 18th century. You can't know everything about them.
Right. You know, one of the things that helped me at the beginning of doing this is when I brought Maggie out those first few times, I did not engage with the public or even the other reenactors very much. I spent time, especially the first two, I'm thinking, walking around in character, trying to look at the event through Maggie's eyes. You know, looking at the different people that were selling things, looking at the people who were demonstrating things, and trying to think, how would I look at this? How would I see this? Standing in the crowd and enjoying watching someone perform as Maggie, never seen something like that before. Going to the door of a store and not going any further because knowing that I can't go in there. I would not be allowed to. Help put my mind into how my proper acting would be around other people. And no one knew I was doing that. I just did it on my own to get myself thinking that way.
Practicing.
Yeah, practicing. And then as I got bolder, beginning to engage on my terms, small engagements, stepping into first person and engaging and doing a very quick something I had practiced and back out again so that I wasn't on the stage the whole time. And that helped me get used to doing that, and it kept me from having to deal with a lot of questions that would have thrown me off right at the very beginning before I had all the rest of this developed. Because it takes time. It just takes a long time to really get to know yourself as that character. And so the last thing you want to do is walk into an event and go, "Hi, I'm this character," and try to engage everybody all at once. That's overwhelming.
You need to learn to be comfortable in that person
Absolutely.
that you've created, and just that experience, that thinking of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, that empathizing with someone that deeply is quite. Just the idea of it is. But it's very deep. I don't have another word for it.
One fun thing that we noticed was the first full year that this version of Maggie was out. everybody felt very sorry for her, and they came down very harshly on the parson.
Oh yeah, I
On
was
the
the
second
victim.
year, they would seek me out, and they would say, "Do you know Maggie's sitting in the shade under that tree?" And they would be telling on her that she was not doing what they knew I would be wanting her to do. So a very interesting dynamic to watch this kind of thing develop.
And even to the point, by the third year, they were coming and complaining to him. She came in my store and handled my stuff, and I think you need to do something about it.
Yeah.
You know, so they progressed with us in this
Wow.
story, which was really neat. When you do a persona, people have to learn how to interact with you because it's something we don't do. Again, we don't know class. We don't understand that. So everyone has to kind of get on their own footing. Not everybody, when you walk out as a character, is just automatically going to fall down and know exactly how they need to talk to you, how they need to act around you. That's something everyone has to learn too.
So we've touched on these topics. You've touched on them several different times, and that is we've developed this inner person. We're working on this worldview. We possibly have our some of our research done. We have how do we take this and deliver it?
That's going to differ from person to person, from persona to persona. Again, because everyone's interaction is going to be different. And it's going to be different when you're doing a reenactor that you're interacting with and when you're doing public that you're interacting with. And that's something you just have to learn to do as you go along. But I will be honest and tell you that there's nothing more disappointing than to put all of this work and effort into a persona and have people refuse to work with you on it. I expect that from the public, but sometimes it's difficult for the reenactors too, that they are uncomfortable with doing that. And sometimes they'll try to first person back with you and then they'll let it go. And sometimes they just absolutely refuse to do it with you. And there have to be moments where you have to back off of it just a little bit. You have to be able to ride with that. Again, my advice to people is to find 2 or 3 little scenarios in your mind where you are comfortable, where you would like to be able to say this and this person say this back, and step into those, set it up and step into those so that you can practice a little, preferably with the reenactors first, because they're the ones that are going to, I think, have more of a heart to try to work back with you. But do something short and sweet that you are very comfortable with, and then back out of it as quickly as you can. Leave in first person and go someplace, and then you work on that outside. What could I have done better with that, or how could I have done that? But don't expect to walk onto an event and know that everyone is going to be able to treat you or work with you in the way you are. It's going to take everyone time to get used to you and to be able to understand you. It took a good 3 years before people were comfortable with Maggie. And there are still people who are not comfortable with her now. So I know that I've got to adjust my expectations from weekend to weekend and from people to people. I know that there are some that I can always count on that if I go a certain way and I say a certain thing, they're going to react a certain way. And then there are some that never are going to do that with me. So it takes practice into doing that. And like I said, little steps, just little steps at a time. And try not to get your hopes too set on being this person and you're going to be this person all day long and everyone's going to treat you this way or act this way. I have had no luck with that at all with either Maggie or Lady Caroline. In fact, I've irritated more people with my other persona than I have made friends with. So it's something that I had to adjust myself when I started doing her. And I've been doing Lady Caroline now for 3 years, and people are still not comfortable with her. Very few people are.
Nobody likes her.
And nobody likes her
I don't
at
blame
all.
them.
At all. I mean, people are very blunt with me about that. I don't like that character. I don't like what you're doing.
Maybe you should try to be a nicer person.
Well, that's not her character, though, is it? So I've got to be able to be willing to roll with that, and to know that people are offended by that.
That actually, that reminds me of the problem of bringing our 21st century thoughts in to. It's like, no, you should try to be a nice person. Well, not everybody was a nice person.
Not everybody was nice.
Right.
Mm-mm.
And we might think, we might want to put our 21st century. You talked about your manners. It's hard to turn off what our manners are.
Right.
Saying hi. Or,
Right.
it's like, hi? You really think they would have said hi in the 18th century? I don't think so. And understanding all those things, it's hard to stop these things that we do every day without even thinking about it.
Right.
And they had a whole different set of things they did without even thinking about it.
Right. That's like we said, we're never going to get perfect. We're never going to get perfect. There are some people out there that do first person that are really, really good. But we're never going to be perfect because we didn't live back then. We don't have those filters. We can't see it. All we can do is try to do it as best we can. And that's where your research comes in.
And research opposing views.
Yes.
Don't just pick what
Yeah.
I think it should be, but read all the views.
Everyone has an antagonist.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And we need to know about the antagonist, or else the story is very boring.
So there has to be something for you to be against or to be not comfortable with. Like I said, Maggie hates the British. She has a reason to, because at the time period, she's not happy about her country being overrun. So it's easy for me to understand how her feelings would have been toward that. But not everybody felt that way. I just chose, because of Maggie's class, for her to feel that way. I could have been totally different. You have to get beyond your own feelings, but you have to use some common sense too. There's only so much of this you can learn, and then some of it you do have to just sit down and go, now, she probably wouldn't have done that, or she probably wouldn't have thought that way, or she's not going to treat these people this way. You were talking about Lady Caroline, I just should be nice. She is nice in her eyes. She thinks she's being very nice. She just doesn't understand why the rest of you are not on board with that.
She understands the true meaning of condescension.
Yes, she's being very gracious to you in her mind for what she is and what you are. But people have a hard time with that. Where Maggie looks at the rest of the world, since she is so low, she looks at you as all being higher, but a bunch of idiots. Again, that's something that I had to take out of her personality and build that a little bit, because it's not what I think at all.
Wow.
I didn't have it on the notes. How much do you feel like you just have to invent out of whole cloth?
I think personality-wise, quite a bit. Once you get past the research, there just has to be personality that comes out of that, and character. It's interesting when I first brought Maggie out, because she's dirty and ragged, everyone expected me to be a thief. They treated me that way. They acted as though I was that way. I was always under suspicion that something was being stolen, or that I had my hand in this, or that I was in the taverns all the time. Yeah, that was something that people just expected of them.
We've read the gazettes. We know what you people do.
Yes.
That's right. And I did not want to bring her out that way. I did not want her to be a thief. I wanted her to be an honest working woman. And so I struggled with that for quite a while, with the reenactors in particular, who were trying to put that persona in there. And I had to come out with her own personality of, well, okay, so why am I not a thief? Well, if I get caught, I'm indentured. If I get caught, I could suffer pretty badly for that. So if nothing else, I'm smart. I'm not going to do that. So you do have to kind of work on the personality of the person you're bringing out a little bit. And I think that gets a little hard, because we want to put our own personality in there.
Well, I was wondering, actually, we had a discussion earlier. We were talking about puppets, and puppets having their own personality, sort of built in. You can't do anything about it. Right. I wonder if there's a certain amount of, I put on clothes, and, my clothes affect me. Mm-hmm. They change my
absolutely.
They change
my
absolutely. Inner person as well as just my outer person.
I walk differently,
yes.
And I speak differently when the clothes come on.
Yes. So there is some of that will happen organically, possibly.
Right, and very naturally.
Yeah.
With practice and time.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And there may even come a little speech to try to do that. And there's going to be even perhaps a wanting to look at the culture and society when you put these clothes on. You begin to step into that a little bit, even though you're not necessarily going after first person, but it's going to come just as a natural thing anyway.
I don't know about you, John, but I have a bit of a headache.
Yeah, it's been very intense.
Yes.
Very wonderful discussion.
And again, I hope that no one feels intimidated by this. That's not the point. This we're talking about a very advanced level of historical interpretation, first-person interpretation. One thing that we did not talk about in our conversation was when you come to an event, you're to the point where you step on the ground, you are in character, and you do not leave character.
No, I don't like to leave character. There are times that you get into situations where you have to step out just a little bit. But for the most part, no. When I come in, step out of and into the ground itself, I become Maggie. And my view of everything changes, my thoughts of everything change, my whole understanding of what is going on completely changes. And I stay there. I have to stay there because I'm not good enough to jump back and forth and back and forth. It is easier for me to come on with that mindset and stay in that mindset for the entire day so that it doesn't come off again. And sometimes it's a couple of hours before I can come out of it. After doing it for a while, it's very often that I can't quit thinking that way or I can't quit talking that way until I calm down and start it again the next day. So
I, on the other hand, am not good enough to be able to stay in it all day. But I do find myself coming and going. I'll step up with a first person. We'll have our interaction as first person, and then as I walk around and have conversations with friends and such, I find myself slipping out purposely. Public comes up. If I'm in a conversation with reenactors and some public walk up, then we turn it back on, and we engage the public because that's why we're at the event in the first place.
So even though you have been doing this together for years, you might I hear you saying you're both at slightly different places on this continuum of engagement.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, she's far surpassed anything that I've ever done or thought about.
Yeah. So we present this idea not to intimidate anyone, and we're not saying everyone has to aspire to this level. What the reason for bringing this to everyone's attention is this is something that is there. It's a possibility that you can pursue, and the farther you get down this continuum of engagement with living history, the richer the experience becomes for everybody. And so it's kind of a challenge, maybe, or an invitation. Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah, that's a good way. If you desire to come this direction.
So, if you're sitting there watching this and you're saying, oh no, there's no way I could do this. Why should I even try? We don't want you to feel that way. But instead, keep this in the back of your mind as you develop your persona and as you continue down this journey into living history. And we throw this out here realizing that this is not something that someone can just pick up and run with. It is something that takes time to develop. And so we're really kind of planting seeds of thought in this direction.
Especially since this is a beginner course,
right?
But we do want to present the full picture, more of what it can be. So much. Thank you so much, Frank and Carol, for coming and giving us your experience. It has been wonderful. I want to thank you so much. It's been so illuminating to get your experience because I haven't done that much of it, and I've been around reenacting for 40 years. But watching and seeing and talking to somebody in depth about this is very, very helpful. I hope everyone out there has found it helpful too. I want to thank you for your interest, your concern about what we're doing, and thank you so much for watching.